So the Indiana Fever have got their enforcer. They have got their enforcer for Caitlin Clark.
Remember when defenders would knock Caitlin Clark to the floor and walk away laughing? When every drive to the basket meant bracing for another cheap shot? When the refs would just shrug as the league's brightest star got hammered game after game?
I'm not gonna lie, like, when it comes to Caitlin Clark and their enforcer, last year everyone was talking about the median enforcer, and the closest thing they had was Erica Wheeler. That was the closest thing they had with someone to defend Caitlin Clark, was Erica freaking Wheeler.
Well, those days just ended. The Indiana Fever went all in on protection, signing 3 veterans known for their toughness and take-no-prisoners attitudes. Natasha Howard, former Defensive Player of the Year. Sophie Cunningham, literal Taekwondo belt. Wnba Bonner, multi-time All-Star with championship DNA. This isn't just a roster upgrade, it's a warning to the entire league.
But Caitlin Clark was getting hit a lot. She was getting hit a lot early, and they needed their Charles Oakley. You've got that in Sophie Cunningham.
Did you see what happened to Caitlin Clark last season? It wasn't just your typical rookie hazing. It was a full-on targeted assault campaign. The numbers tell a shocking story. 17% of all flagrant fouls in the entire WNBA were committed against Clark alone. One player. That's not normal treatment. That's a bullseye painted on her back.
Clark in pain after she caught that fingertip in the eye.
And if you thought that was bad, wait till you hear about the Chicago Sky. They took this targeting to a whole other level, responsible for an astonishing 80% of all flagrant fouls against Clark. This wasn't coincidence. It was strategy. It was like watching a team decide, hey, let's make this rookie's life miserable every time she steps on the court.
And Clark.
Remember that game against the Sky when Angel Reese delivered that brutal knockdown while Clark was driving to the basket?
Commentators weren't just questioning the call, they were openly asking if the league was even trying to protect its biggest new star. And then there was Chennedy Carter's hard foul that left Clark picking herself up off the floor again. Clark's response, that's just not a basketball play. No dramatic complaints, no Twitter rants, just a rookie showing veteran composure while her body was taking a beating.
The foul, I believe, to Angel Reese. Yep, across the head.
Yeah, that's right.
Is being reviewed for possible upgrade to a flagrant.
The most impressive part, Clark's mental toughness. She kept getting up. Every hard foul, every cheap shot, she'd dust herself off and get back to work. But let's be real, this treatment took its toll. Her shooting percentages suffered. Her drives to the basket became more hesitant. How could they not? When you know someone's waiting to knock you down every time you attack the rim, it affects your game.
Be protecting Caitlin Clark type thing. And every good player, by the way, every good player, every good team that is a super duper star. Most of the time have enforcer type players.
What should have been headlines about her historic rookie accomplishments instead became constant discussion about whether she was being adequately protected. Meanwhile, inside the Fever's front office, alarm bells were ringing. Their franchise cornerstone, the player they built their entire future around, was getting hammered night after night with little consequence to opponents.
Now, in the second half of last season, the Fever played a lot faster. Clark had the ball in her hands. And every off-season move they made signified they continue to want to put the pedal to the metal when it comes to playing up.
Fever brass watched these hits add up, saw their star taking punishment that would break most rookies, and finally said enough is enough. They weren't about to let another season pass with Clark serving as the league's punching bag. Their solution, don't just hope for better officiating, build a protective wall around your star. And,
of course, the moves that they made said as much. You bring back Kelsey Mitchell, one of the fastest players in the league. You sign Natasha Howard, whose nickname is Flash. One would think you're going to play fast, especially when Caitlin Clark is the catalyst to everything you do.
When the Fever said they were building a protective wall around Clark, they weren't messing around. They went straight for the nuclear option. Natasha Howard isn't just joining Indiana as another veteran. She's bringing her 2019 Defensive Player of the Year trophy and 3 championship rings with her. Think about what this means. The Fever just added a defensive specialist who's been shutting down the league's best for years, specifically to make life miserable for anyone who thinks they can keep targeting their star.
But they've now made another addition to the roster in a spot of need, bringing in veteran Natasha Howard from the Dallas Wings. Howard, a 3-time WNBA champion and a former Defensive Player of the Year. Most importantly, she's made 2 defensive team.
Howard's numbers tell you
Everything about her defensive intensity. 7 straight seasons averaging at least 1 block and 1 steal per game. That's not just good, that's elite level consistency that changes how teams approach the game. Remember those players who felt comfortable knocking Clark to the floor? They're about to meet a 6'2" defensive force with a wingspan that makes driving to the basket feel like entering a no-fly zone.
Fever really needed toughness, defense, and rebounding, and Howard can provide that. She can slide right into the 4 spot or the forward spot, you know, where they really needed to upgrade next to Aaliyah Boston.
what makes
Howard so perfect for protecting Clark is her versatility. She's not just anchored to the paint. She can switch out to the perimeter when guards try getting physical with Clark, then slide back inside to swat away shots at the rim. That kind of defensive range means Clark's harassers have nowhere to hide anymore. When opponents see Howard rotating over, they'll think twice about those incidental contacts that sent Clark sprawling last season.
Obviously, that core of Boston, Mitchell, and Clark is able to put up buckets, but you get a glue type player in Howard who can put pressure on the rim, you know, move in transition, do all of those things, and is a proven winner.
But Howard's impact extends beyond just intimidation. Her ability to handle bigger, more physical players means Clark won't get stuck guarding posts anymore. No more mismatches where Clark gives up 6 inches and 30 pounds to an opponent looking to bully her in the paint. Howard takes those assignments herself, freeing
Like Sophie Cunningham, there are so many things where it's like, part of it her fault, part of it not her fault, but she will not back down. She will not back down under any circumstances from anything. And that is what the Indiana Fever need. If somebody hits Caitlin Clark, if somebody does what Victoria Vivians did to Caitlin Clark, it's not going to be Caitlin Clark that's getting involved to be teed up. Sophie Cunningham's...
And there's a nice move and finish. She's got some, you know, bounce. Not a great three-point shooter, mind you, but I'm sure the Fever will keep her in the lab on that in the offseason because that's going to be an important shot for her to hit with this roster. But there you see, getting out in transition. Caitlin Clark's finding that, right? Bucket.
the most surprising